And you guys, inshallah, can also ask if you have any ideas. I want to talk about LGBT now, inshallah ta'ala. It's a little shorter. Again, the bulk of the program was about feminism. And the main objection about feminism, they say it's unfair that men and women have different laws. And we argue in Islam that men and women are designed differently from the first place, so they need different laws. Because their bodies are not the same, their minds are not the same, psychologically they're not the same. They're two different beings, really. And so they need different laws, but both of them can please Allah Ta'ala and both can go to Jannah. That's the equality that we talk about within Islam. If a man fulfills his job, being a responsible individual, taking care of his family, he'll get Jannah. If a woman takes care of her household, takes care of what Allah told her to take care of, she'll go to Jannah. They can both get Jannah. You'll find certain women, because they fulfill the job better than their husbands, they'll go to Jannah in a higher place and actually drag their husbands up there. This is how it's going to be for many people. So in any case, just keep that in mind. That's the exact answer that we give there. In terms of LGBT, how does this one influence liberalism? So I want to, before we get into this, I want to give you a bunch of resources, inshallah. I'll send it to Mawlana afterwards, inshallah, about the different resources, because there are a lot of things we can talk about here. I don't have enough time to talk about these things. Like I told you, each one deserves its own program, really. But there are resources because there are legitimate problems within our Muslim community. Certain people have certain homosexual ideas that come up, and they don't know how to handle them, how to deal with them. And subhanAllah, there are WordPresses, there are podcasts, there are even support groups for Muslim brothers or sisters that are having trouble with these issues and they need someone to talk to. I don't know what you're going through. I wish I could understand, but it's not, I just don't feel like that, you know? But a man might feel something towards a man and he needs some help to talk about it. And Islam has certain resources, mashallah, especially in our time. So many different things we can give as resources here. Historically speaking, first and foremost, okay, let's just talk about historically. And this is a big summary. Homosexuality was considered a psychological disease by the founders of psychoanalysis. I'm talking about in terms of the domain of psychology, homosexuality was considered a psychological disease. Okay, so what are we talking about? Sigmund Freud. Freud is a weird guy. Don't ever study Freud. This man is going to drive you crazy. Even listening to him in class and stuff, you're like, my God, who the heck would ever follow this man? But in any case, they love him so much. He's like the founder of psychoanalysis. It is noteworthy that Freud also suggested that homosexuality is a variation of the sexual function produced by a certain arrest of sexual development. What that means in simple English is that Freud considered that if a person did not completely mature, they didn't become completely adult, they might get stuck on homosexual tendencies. They didn't evolve past it, they didn't grow up enough for them to be mature enough to become someone who is a straight person. He considered to be something which is inferior to normal understanding. This is literally within the 1900s, by the way. We're not talking about like 1800s. We're talking about last century people. Okay, Carl Jung said even worse things. He said the disagreeable thing is that the mother has then all the real feeling of the boy, the heterosexual feeling, what is left only an inferior feeling for women. Okay, so it's talked about, they have this, I told you, weird stuff. This Oedipus complex, this feeling of a man being attracted to his mother, weird stuff. They were like, what the heck are we talking about, Mawlana? I did not sign up for this program, okay? Yeah, you definitely didn't sign up for this program. Trust me, we only started, okay? We only started. Carl Jung said that a man who doesn't get over the feelings for his mother, right? Then he might get only having some feeling for inferior women. To him, women are either mothers or prostitutes, but not real women. Even this adaptation to the woman may be too difficult. Then he says, if he cannot adjust to a woman at all, then there's nothing left for him to become a homosexual. He has to become gay because he can't seem to get over it. And then literally he wrote, the more homosexual a man is, the more prone he is to disloyalty and the seduction of boys. Because that's literally what they think about these people. What I'm trying to say is, this is people from psychology within modern times, what they considered first. Jeffrey Santinover, he said it drives from many different reasons: genetic, hormonal, family relations, interaction with peers, psychological trauma. In 1952, the homosexuality was considered part of the DSM, which is the psychological Bible of diseases, right? Psychological diseases. They considered homosexuality to be a psychopathic disorder in 1952. What happens is, within that time, 1952 to about 1970 or so, there's something called the sexual revolution, and where they revolt against sexual practices and stuff. So they want that marriages be separated. They don't want they separate reproduction, and they want to have free relations with whoever and whatever. Okay, so then because of the sexual revolution, 1952 it was a psychological disease, right? 1968 they changed it to sexual orientation disturbance. They say that it's just a disturbance. Then in 1973 they completely remove it from the DSM. They say no, it's no longer a psychological disease, to the point that Nicholas Cummings, who's the president of the American Psychological Association, you know, when you write like scientific articles or essays, you have to write in APA format. He was the president of it. Okay, he said political correctness rules, not science. He says what's driving people's agenda now is political correctness. It's not science anymore. Scientists claim that he said that scientists at his time, they claim that it's not able to be treated or cured. They say it's a natural tendency. And he goes and says himself, he says it's absurd to say that homosexuals cannot change. He said, I experienced more than one. He said 20% of homosexuals who came to him, they could change, and they did change. So he said it's not something which is based on your nature that you can't seem to move at all. It's not rigid like race, right? It's something different. So many different psychologists said the same thing. Psychology has helped society accept homosexuality. By claiming it's something natural, not something from nurture, it pushes people to accept it as a reality that you cannot change. Okay, and they said they was exploited for political reasons, etc. Many different things we can speak about on this point. But the point I'm trying to stress here is that there's a push to make people into individuals because of the money behind it. There's a lot of money behind it. What am I talking about? If you own a nail salon, who are your normal customers? Women. Now, if you allow people to switch genders, now how many more clients do you get? Okay, they're like you wondering why like Pride Month was a really funny month, right? Why is it a really funny month? Because a lot of these businesses, they put on rainbow flags for the month, and literally the day after Pride Month, they remove the flags. Because you think they care? You think they honestly care about rights or whatever? What do they care about? Just making money. It's a lot cheaper to produce unisex clothes than is like if you can sell your clothes to everyone. Is the charger in? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. It's just a battery don't low. There's also put on that side. Okay, I think it's fine now. So cool. If you can sell unisex clothes, if you can sell clothes from, if you only have male clothes and female clothes, right, men and women's sides, right, you make a lot more money if you can sell to both, right? So there's there's an agenda here about breaking the family structure, right? So what I mean is that when we're talking about the, let me talk about the science now, because the big thing they talk about is the gay gene, right? They say there's a gay gene. They say it's natural because there is a gene which will determine if a person is gay or not. Okay. And the second thing they argue through is animals. They say that animals also have these type of tendencies, therefore we should also have them. Okay. So there's no gay gene. There's no gay gene. Okay. There's an article by nature.com in 2019, a massive study that they done. The researchers, they published their studies, their findings. They said there's no gay gene. Massive study homes in on genetic basis of homosexuality. Nearly 500,000 genomes reveal 5 DNA markers associated with sexual behavior, but none with the power to predict the sexuality of an individual. Okay, what else do we find? A new study involving almost 500,000 participants from the UK, US, and Sweden is by the most extensive of its kind, found it's effectively impossible to predict an individual's sexual behavior from the genome. When they say something natural or something from nature, they can't prove it. There's no proof of this. They're just trying to feed you a lie which is not really there. This is the thing I'm trying to say here. Okay, and I remember I mentioned this in the program, right? I said about an evolutionist who was asked about what homosexuality is, right? Because to evolutionary wise, is it evolutionary, like, it's survival of the fittest, right? Natural selection. What are all people here to do? They're all here to reproduce. Does that help you to be a homosexual? Like, I think that's the exact opposite, right? So the evolutionist, he got into, when the person asked the question, I was like, oh, they got him good. He was a kafir, atheist, whatever. So then I was waiting for his answer. You know what he said? He said that homosexuality is nature's way of reducing the human population. Homosexuality is nature's way of reducing human population. There's too much population growth now. This is the way human nature is curbing that. Okay, the study found no single gay gene and concludes that the link between genetics, environment, and sexual orientation is extremely complicated, with thousands of genetic variants potentially having some degree on influence of behavior. Okay, when they say, so that's the gay gene. When they say animals, okay, do animals have sexual orientation? They don't. Okay, if an animal were to have any attraction like that or interaction like that with their own, it's probably to assert dominance, right? That's usually what it's for. Is that if a male lion wants to show dominance over all the male lions, maybe he'll perform an act to show them that it submitted you, something like that. But it's never the case that its purposes, it might facilitate some other social goals. We have research on this point that there's no sexual orientation for animals. This is literally a common. This is one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard. Okay, why do I mean so? What else do animals do? They eat what? Each other, not just plants, right? They'll eat each other. Cannibalism is mashhoor, it's famous within animals. Or should we all become cannibals now? Right? The funny one, also, is actually polygamy is known in the animal kingdom. Having more wives makes sense. If we're gonna act like animals, it's subhanAllah. But no one will argue that point. So LGBT wise, when we're talking in terms of homosexuality, there's no natural basis for it when it comes to evidence within science. Transgenderism is also there. I put it in bold. Indeed, the most significant neurological characteristics that are sexed show no differences to speak out between transgender individuals and non-transgender members of the native sex. People think that if it's a person who's transgender is transitioning between man to woman, they probably think that he has a female brain or something. That's what, like, you're thinking that his brain is probably feminine or female, and that's why he has to transition. That is not the case. His brain is actually just like a normal man's. Okay, maybe there's some issues here and there, but for the most part, he is a man. There's no way to argue that. His body's been built for what again? Testosterone, right? And a woman's body's been built for estrogen. That stuff hasn't changed. So even talking psychologically speaking, there's no differences between a normal male brain and a person who transitioned to a female. They're both the same, okay? And there are different, again, researches that show that it's the same exact thing as well, okay? So, and then just as a side point, since we're already on the topic, there are a lot of complications when it comes to medical treatments, which people don't talk about. People are so open to just say transition without realizing the problems, okay? Puberty blockers. If you stop a man from going to puberty, you could make that person infertile, right? If, for example, a man who wants to become a woman, right? And so he takes puberty blockers. They say take puberty blockers, no problem. Because that way you can have some time to figure it out, right? So then what happens is his puberty is delayed. So sometimes because of that, he can't, I'm trying to use like a nice word, the inzal, the stuff that he produces are not as strong as they should be because he hasn't gone through proper puberty. And so the testosterone in his body is weak, number one, and the stuff that he has within his area is weaker. So he can't really do that stuff like he wants to. A woman is even worse because why? Because if she misses puberty, she might become someone who can never have a baby anymore. Let's say she realizes that I'm not actually a man, I'm a woman. Now you made this woman infertile. She can't have kids anymore. That's what happens to puberty blockers. Cross-sex hormones, again, the body was not designed to take testosterone if it's a girl, and it's not designed to take estrogen if it's a boy. Because of taking estrogen for a man, it actually reduces the strength of his bones. There's a lot of brittleness that happens in the bones, osteoporosis, a lot of different issues happen within the bones of a man because he's trying to transition to a female. A lot of harm happens, and because they're again, testosterone is not just with the physical stuff, it's with the psychological stuff too. He becomes depressed. Suicide rates actually increase after transitioning. People never talk about that. It doesn't solve the problem. They said, if I don't transition, I'll commit suicide. I'll kill myself. Though what's happening after they transition, still they go through these issues of depression, etc. Sex reassignment. Oh, I can't go through this one. This one, like sex reassignment. You think that they can actually like medically turn a man into a woman? Do you think they really can do that? No. Do you think they can actually produce the parts? How about a woman going to a man? Do you know how much you have to do to produce a part? You know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot that has built this body. It's a miracle this body works the way it does. You can't produce that in a medical lab or a medical into an operation room. And trans regret after transitioning how they want to shift back, but they can no longer do so. There are a lot of complications with these medical treatments. Okay, that's the nature part. Philosophically speaking, the philosophical parts here, the class of nature versus nurture. Okay, so if they said to you that it's something I'm born with, something I can't control. Okay, if it's nature, I just ask this question objectively. Are you required to follow your biology? Are you forced to follow your biology? Is it something that's imperative that if my mind is telling me to do something, I should do it? Like, for example, for a man, I'm going to get to examples anyways, right? So, in any case, many people believe that genes cause complex psychological behavior, psychosocial behavior. Yet this is not the case, right? Genes, there's a lot of things. For example, gambling. Gambling is linked to a gene that's passed through generations. And so there's a genetic factor when it comes to gambling. This is much more affirmed than homosexuality definitely is. That there are some genetic markers will show you that you have more likelihood to go to gamble. There are genetic markers that show you that you're more likely to drink alcohol. There are genetic markers that show you you're more likely to commit certain sins that we have in Islam, right? And certain things like that. There are markers like that. Should you go gamble then? Should you go smoke then? Should you go drink then? Right? Is it okay that if a man goes to his wife and says, oh, honey, I'm sorry I cheated on you, but I have a lot of testosterone. It's just genetically speaking, biologically speaking. I can't seem to control myself. I'm sorry. The animals all have polygamy. I'm sorry, I did it too. Like this type of argument. Is it really what we're going to go towards? Nature, you're really going to say nature here? Really try to dodge this one. Don't say nature, right? And if by finding a gene, you not just become not responsible for your actions at all. If I did find a gay gene, oh what? Congratulations, now whatever you do is completely fine. Let's say if they found like an incest gene. Well, Now there's a person who commits incest completely. Let's say they find a rape gene. You know, like certain tendencies, if you find them within genetics, does that mean that you have no more responsibility? Like, you know, this is, can morality be determined by biology? Can your moral code, your ethic be determined by biology, right? So the LG, the lesbian gay, will tell you that is nature. The transgender, the T, will tell you that is nurture. They say that, you know, gender is a social construct. You hear this, right? Gender is a social construct. That everything can be changed based on environments, right? That if you're raised in an environment that you're like a girl, you become a girl. And if you're in an environment which you're like a boy, you become a boy, right? This type of weird stuff you hear, okay? If it is, and so again, for sake of argument, let's say that because of your nature, your environment, you turn into a girl. What's the easy response to that? Isn't it possible if I put you in another environment, you could turn back to a boy? Right? So then a person can then change their orientation or gender through therapy. If I put you through therapy, it's possible that you could change back. Isn't that possible? If you're saying it's a nurture issue, then I'll say that I can nurture you back then. This is something that you, again, they put themselves in a corner when they talk about nature. They put themselves in a corner when they put themselves in nurture. You cannot argue on these two things. Now, I'm focusing on transgenderism, inshallah. Inshallah, we can do it, okay. They tell you gender is a social construct, right? Being a man or a woman doesn't really exist. Being a man or a woman doesn't really exist. So, you know, it's just societies develop the concept of man, and societies develop the concept of woman. This is what they tell you. Again, you just need to have a good response to it. So, you know, my question to them is, if man and woman doesn't really exist, then how can you transition between two fake things? Right? What are you transitioning from? You're transitioning from one fake thing to what? Another fake thing. This transitioning thing makes no sense, right? If they're made up anyways, how can you choose them? Right? If a lion is fake, you can't pretend to be a lion, no matter how much you try. Okay? If being a man doesn't mean anything, how do you become it? Right? And so, can we just say that you're a woman with manly traits then? So saying you're a woman that is a man, you know, like, can we just say you're a woman that has some traits which are manly, versus saying you're transitioned to a man? This is the paradox in which this type of stuff exists. Every kufr exists in a paradox. Trinity, 1 + 1 + 1. Apparently, you know, if you ask them math, you take a math problem in front of them, you say, what is 1 + 1 + 1 equals 3. Okay, now one God, one Father, plus one Son, plus one Holy Ghost equals 1. Ajib nonsense you hear. You know, how does this exist? Okay, so the LG and the T actually are not on the same side. LG will talk about that we're nature. T will say we're nurture. So they both are clashing with one another anyways. Okay, when you say, if I were to ask you, do you know what it means to be a man? Everyone here? Yeah. Yeah, because why? Because you are. Okay. Okay, because you are a man. If a woman transitions to become a man, does she really know what it means to feel to be a man? She can never know that experience, because no matter how much you pretend to be a lion, doesn't make you a lion. Similarly, no matter how much they want to become a man, it doesn't ultimately make them into a man. Actually, what they did to themselves is that they put themselves in another group. They made a third group anyways. Because of the bathroom issue, they can't seem to figure out, should we make, you know, a completely unisex bathroom? They said they'll just make a third bathroom. So you didn't solve the problem. You just caused another gender, quote unquote, to exist. You haven't solved the problem. So to claim either nature or nurture causes problems. Okay? To claim both also causes problems. If you say that it's nature and nurture, the human beings, they can develop morality or the ethics through nature and nurture, this is also a problem. Because the main question is, can human beings decide on their own morals? Are we allowed to define ourselves? Do we have enough information to produce a human identity? Can really one human say that this is how all humans are? Would you feel comfortable if one human told you that this is how humans are should be? Or whatever. If Sigmund Freud told you that everyone has a complex with their mother, would you agree with him? No, you would not definitely not agree with him. Who should decide how human morals are? Should it be nature or nurture? Should it be humans? My argument, your argument, is that the one who has the information should define us. The one who has information is Allah. The one who created us should figure out how to define us, because why? He created the product and he has the manual.